Hello, hello, Dr. Eleanor.
And hello, Name.
Hi, sweetheart.
Hi, how are
Hi.
you?
I'm so good. I'm so good. I love spending time with you. Today, I wanted to talk about cosmic guidance
Okay.
and would love to understand kind of the buildup or how it was that you decided to write those questions. And yeah, so if you can orient us to what you imagine for this book.
Well, it started probably in 2006
Mm,
when I decided to look at the multidimensional for myself
hmm
to see if I looked at a day as a four-world composite, if what the transits were on the prenatal would play out as manifestation over the 3-month period.
Ah.
And so I began writing what I called daily wisdom practices.
hmm
I would release them I think every month or every week. I think it was every month.
Mm.
People started subscribing and telling me that what I was saying about each day was very helpful for them.
Got it.
And I was breaking it down by each world.
Mm.
Uh, so for a number of years, I basically spent my weekends writing the daily
Ah,
wisdom practices.
uh-huh.
And they were extremely beneficial. And
Mm.
I also wrote a daily action point, which was like the integrated
Ah.
statement of the day, which it's not exactly what's in the book.
Mm.
But then I decided for a while, I think probably in about 2010, and I did it until probably 2014, 13 or 14, I think 13. Um, I started doing calendars,
Ah.
and they were amazing,
Mm.
very intense, but I did them ahead of time for the whole year. And then each month I would write the daily wisdom practices to go with them. And they worked.
Mm.
And I was able to trade the stock market based on my
Ah.
calendars.
I see.
And I've done well in the stock. I was a stock trader, a day trader for a number of years.
Mm.
Um, Charles and I.
Mm.
Um, and actually, I just cashed out my grandson's account.
Oh.
I bought him mostly Apple stock
Mm.
uh, for his birthdays when he was a baby.
Sure.
And I just cashed out his account, and there was enough money in it for him and his wife to buy an apartment.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
that makes me feel so good because I
Yeah.
didn't do it for very many years, but
Mm.
then it grew.
Got it. And I'm
Uh,
wondering, oh, go ahead.
you're wondering?
Yeah, I'm wondering because who knows who's going to come to this conversation, on YouTube or wherever they're engaging with us. And I'm wondering if you want to give that like snapshot view of what you mean by the four worlds in case this happens to be their first introduction to you.
Okay. So what I found well, let me preface it. I'm a psychologist by training
Mm,
and trained as a Jungian analyst. And Jung talked about different dimensions of consciousness
hmm
that impact how we think, how we perceive, how we navigate. And he talked about four types.
got it.
Um, the four types didn't really resonate fully with me because when I do the Myers-Briggs, I come out equal on all four types.
I see.
which is unheard of. Uh, but I did it when I was in Jungian training, and then I did it years later, and it came out the same way.
Hmm.
So when I was, just that's like, okay, my background, my PhD was in anthropology, sociology, biology, and psychology, four worlds. I
Ah.
didn't know it at the time,
Hmm.
but my whole education was a synthesis
Ah.
of fields and studying with some of the top people in each field.
Mm.
So each person had this little piece of information, but they didn't talk to the people over here.
Got it.
And so I was always putting them together.
Mm.
And when I was in graduate school, I was reading Jung. And Jung was not read when I was in graduate school.
Mm.
Jung is still not read because Jung does not have a cohesive
Uh-huh.
theory.
Uh-huh.
He has ways of addressing the collective unconscious, but nobody lived or worked in that dimension of consciousness.
Mm.
So when Ra, when I saw the mandala, I understood what it was.
Mm.
And I already was a student of the Tree of Life,
Mm.
which talks about four worlds:
Mm.
the mental world, the spiritual world, the emotional world, and the physical world.
Got it.
And Ra gave me what he called the dream design. Now, he was right that the lunar calculation is, in fact, the dream design, but the solar dream calculation is the meditation design,
Mm.
not the dream design.
I see.
And then he was missing a calculation for the sleep design
Mm.
because Ra didn't have a background in psychology or sleep architecture or physiology. So he had a hypothesis, and he gave me the hypothesis to test.
Mm.
And in testing it, I found that some things held and some things didn't hold. And with the what he called the dream design, it was an incomplete image
Mm.
because, and an incomplete calculation, because he said what the voice told him
Mm.
was that his dog Barley
Right.
had a different matrix
Mm.
based on the lunar cycle.
Mm.
Well, as you know, my websites and everything are named after a cat.
Right.
I knew that cats not only dream, but also sleep and go into deep sleep. So I needed to find the deep sleep calculation.
Mm.
And I did using twin kittens. And I also asked Ra, I have this download. Where is that?
Mm.
Which world is it in? Which matrix is it in? And he said, well, the voice told me there's another matrix.
Mm.
Didn't give it to me. So I asked, and the voice gave it to me
Mm.
within a few days. And it's a 33 gate matrix.
Mm.
And as I'm working with them, increasingly with the Tree of Life, they hold.
Mm.
And when I got the all that Ra gave me was the solar dream design and the lunar dream design, which I put together and did the statistics on type in
Mm.
each matrix,
Mm.
and it held.
Mm.
So Ra and I began teaching about what we called the triple design matrix,
Got it.
which looked at what happens when you sleep, dream, meditate, what happens as your consciousness and matrix shifts.
Mm,
And it was from that work that I began to think, well, we can't just look at a transit for a waking world. We need to see what happens when we go to sleep. Because in someone like myself, I go to sleep in the prenatal layer without a sacral center.
mm,
But when I sleep, I gain the sacral center, not in my sleep design, but in my human design.
mm,
So there's some nuance in psychological and physiological understanding about what these charts are and how we function with the charts. And I believe and have data that type is like saying to somebody, you've written this whole paper, and there are these sections you've highlighted. Should I pay more attention to those sections than the unhighlighted ones? That's what a body graph is.
mm,
It's showing us not who we are, but it's showing us our predisposing tendencies to respond to an energy that is familiar to us.
mm,
What is undefined in a body graph is all possibility open to us.
mhm,
What is defined is telling us to slant our perception in a certain way. That's
mm,
all.
mm.
But it doesn't mean we don't have every single gate.
Right.
So when I do the dream designs now, I do them two ways.
Mm,
I look at them in their matrix, but I also look at them in the 64 gate matrix because at critical periods in human development, they activated our 64 gate matrix. And we don't develop fully at birth.
right.
We only develop the gastrointestinal sophistication at 3 months of age. And the cortex at 3 months of age now can make choices.
Mm,
Before 3 months of age, all choices were unconscious choices.
mhm,
But at 3 months of age, a baby will reach for something it likes, or
mm,
it sees something that it's interested in, and you see it looking,
mm,
or it turns to the music it likes. So you begin at 3 months of age to see this whole human being
mm,
with all the worlds integrated,
mm.
functioning mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically, and having preferences in each world.
Uh-huh.
So, what I did for many, many years was to write all of the transits for all of the worlds.
Mm,
And when I decided to do the cosmic guidance book,
mhm,
I went through and I picked some of the statements
mm.
from what I'd written that were applicable every year.
Great.
And so the cosmic guidance book is evergreen.
Mhm. I got really excited by the book just generally because what you transmit and put out in form, whether it's these conversations or in written, has a big impact in my soul and my energy. And our friend Sean Walbridge has been reading these on his Instagram
right?
or his social media, and you and I have been talking about, well, Dr. Eleanor, do you want to read some? So those are on the
Absolutely
horizon.
will.
And so um I was reading the beginning section, from the author, and the place about how to use the book I thought was really interesting. And I'm wondering if you want to speak to what you recommend for people should they decide to watch the social media for the different days or to get the book so that they have their own, because I'm seeing it as journal prompts. I don't know if that's how you'd phrase it.
They are journal prompts, really.
Hmm.
Um, what I found myself writing frequently, and understand that the statements relate to aspects in the body graph.
Mm.
And so when I say something like, breathe as though the divine breathes you,
Yeah.
which I say frequently,
I love when you say it.
I do too. That really came out of my work with Buteyko breathing.
Oh.
Buteyko it's a Russian originated breathing tool that was used by Patrick McEwen, who is the Buteyko person. And Patrick um, he grew up as a very bad asthmatic.
Oh.
And Marvin, my husband, is double boarded in immunology
Mm.
and internal medicine. So we went to Patrick's classes and then had Patrick come to our home and teach Buteyko breathing to our
Mm.
clients,
Mm.
especially orphans, asthmatics.
Lovely.
And Patrick said, keep your mouth closed.
Mm.
You don't want to mouth breathe. You want to nose breathe. And babies who mouth breathe have buck teeth and jaw issues.
I see.
So he recommends taping your mouth shut at night. Um, but what was so interesting in his teaching was that we need much less air than we think.
Mm.
And so in Buteyko breathing, you train yourself to have a longer pause between the in breath and the out breath
Mm.
because you don't need as much air as you think you need. And so as I was working with breathing and realizing we need so much less,
Mm.
I thought, on days when there is activation in the throat, there is activation where breathing would balance you. You want to breathe, and the way I experience it within myself, and of course the words don't communicate it, is I would feel as though I wasn't even breathing
Mm.
and that the air was just osmosing into me
Mm.
and filling me up with divine light.
Mm.
So that's the image that I would get when I was writing that would say, breathe as though the divine breathes you.
Mm.
So it's like saying, you are in the arms of the divine.
Mm.
Let that be you.
Mm.
You don't need to do anything.
Mm.
And the fear disappears.
Yeah.
And you're in that peaceful place. Now, sometimes I don't remember where I wrote it or where I said it, but each statement, my process in doing the writing was to print out all the charts of all the worlds,
Mm.
all the month,
Got it.
which would mean I'd have a stack, you know,
Yeah.
pretty high of not just the four worlds, which I send out those charts, but in my own charts, I would print out all of the composites
Mm,
of all of the charts in all of the worlds. And I would print out I would look at the astrology
sure.
as well. So it was pretty intense to
Hmm.
write accurately.
Yeah.
Um, but it was well worth it
Yeah. Yeah.
because reading them would prepare me for the day.
Mm,
And it would prepare me. I started looking early on. I was probably still doing day trading.
mm.
And so I knew which days were manifesting generator days in full composite. And on those days, the market would go up
Got
like
it.
clockwork.
Got it.
And it would tell me where to put myself.
So I heard you say when you would wake up, you would orient yourself to these questions. So is your vision or your introduction or offer to people is that they read at the start of their day, and then I
Oh,
thought
yeah,
I saw some questions for, and then the day is complete. Now come back. Can you talk about
right.
the end of the day process?
Well, I would suggest reading them in the morning
Mm,
and coming back at the end of the day, reading them again and
mm,
using them as journal prompts.
got it.
What did you, was, what did you learn from your day?
Hmm.
I always, in my day, say, okay, what is so important that I need to integrate into myself?
Mm,
And there's always things to integrate
hmm.
and things to learn and challenges. So, which world is going to challenge you today?
Mm,
And are you going to be prepared? So, the book is aimed, if you read it in the morning, you are prepared for what
mm,
the day is going to bring.
hmm.
Let it bring it,
Hmm.
and then go back to it and say, what did my day bring me?
Wonderful.
And what did I love? And what would I want to change and do differently,
Yeah.
if anything?
Well, and the other piece I'm tracking, and I want to check this out with you, is it it sounds as though what you're offering in the book and your frame of the end of the day reflecting back are clean questions. Is that accurate?
Ideally, clean questions, but not necessarily.
Mm,
No, each world has its own kinds of questions.
got it.
And if in a given day there was a relationship issue, let's say, you could ask yourself clean questions about it.
Mm-hmm.
You could possibly ask your relationship person questions about it. But if you're going to relate to somebody else as a postmortem, so to speak, you might need to use active listening. You
Mm,
might need to use mirroring. You might need to use journaling, where each of you write down some stuff and then you compare notes.
mm,
Uh, there's never in my work a formula.
yeah.
Um, there's not even a formula for how you read the questions.
Mm,
I mean, how you read the statements in the book.
mm-hmm.
Because if something touches you, where is it touching you?
Mm-hmm.
And that can become a question.
Mm-hmm.
So my life has been dedicated to inner self-reflection from the time I was a young child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember at age 7 or 8, probably 8, 7.5 to 8. I had polio when I was 7.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember after polio getting yoga books from the library. I was interested in theater, so I studied drama and I studied. I remembered I was fascinated by double lotus positions,
Ah.
and I'm very flexible. So I would sit in my tiny little room um, in a double lotus position and meditate when I was 7 and 8. And
Got
I remember because I remember my mother or somebody, an older sibling, coming in and saying, "You shouldn't be sitting like that. You just had polio."
it. Mm.
And I said, "Why not? I can sit like this if I want to. It's comfortable."
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it was a natural position.
Mm-hmm.
So my own process has been a self-reflective journaling process since I was a kid. I've
Mm.
kept a diary since I was 8.
Got it.
Not consistently, not all the time, but I have journals and books I can go back to and look at throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I also suggest that depending on where you are in your life, you get the history
Mm.
of everyone in your life and use the cosmic guidance book as questions for people in your life as well.
Mm.
It can have generalized uses
Mm-hmm.
because in the book, I do give some clean questions. I do give some statements that would guide you towards self-actualization, which is what my life mission is,
Mm-hmm.
to help people ascend and fulfill their potential.
Beautiful.
So the worlds are very specific. The mental world is the world you function in your waking life.
Mm.
It's generally not a world that cares about your soul.
Mm.
Those of you who have a job, I've never had a job. Those of you who have a job may be sacrificing your soul every
Mm-hmm.
single day. Um, you you are, it's not intentional, but the field of psychology has grown up based on Freud
Mm.
more than any other psychologist.
Mm.
And if you look at the history, before 1900, the field of psychology didn't exist.
Mm.
Um, it doesn't mean people were unconscious, but it means they didn't talk about feelings and the unconscious and any of that. Mesmer in the late 1800s, with hypnosis, introduced the concept of the unconscious that could be influenced by consciousness.
Mm.
And then Freud and Jung were colleagues. Jung was a student of Freud,
Mm.
and they differed. So they sort of broke off in 1910. But Mesmer Freud was a medical doctor. So, as a medical doctor, you began to learn hypnosis because Mesmer discovered that you could use hypnosis as anesthesia.
Oh.
You can.
Hmm.
Early in my career, when I was a sex therapist, working with a OBGYN as my sex therapy partner, we had a client who needed a hysterectomy,
Hmm.
and she was afraid of anesthesia and couldn't have it. So I did hypnosis with her, and she had the hysterectomy using hypnosis as the full anesthesia.
Whoa. That blows my mind.
It blows everybody's mind.
Wow.
But yes, um, so the Freud took that knowledge and said, well, the unconscious, what we don't know about ourselves, could be influencing us
Hmm.
in how we live our life. And so Freud hypothesized the id, which was the unconscious and very animalistic unconscious, the ego, which was our conscious living mind, and the superego, which is what we aspire to, our ethics, our morality. And the field of psychology took that hook, line, and sinker
Hmm.
and began to see people the way Freud had laid them out psychologically.
Hmm.
And then Jung said, I don't agree with that.
Hmm.
I think we have a personal unconscious and a collective unconscious.
Hmm.
And that was around 1910 when the world began to disintegrate. And um, it was necessary to explain the craziness that was going on.
Hmm.
Whereas I don't think prior to that, people really cared.
Hmm.
And we didn't have in America, we had free speech and all of that. So, but people didn't think about the psyche, about happiness in the
Hmm.
way they did after Freud and Jung, and the field began to develop and expand, and conferences, and it got into the schools and all of that. And then with the 1920s and the Depression, psychology became popular.
Hmm.
But in 1977, I asked my mother, I said, Ma, I'm the youngest of five.
Hmm.
And my sister's 17 years older than me. My
Hmm.
brother's 16 years older than me. A sister 11 years older than me. A sister 2.5 years older than me. So my mother had five children spread out. So I said to her, so Ma, when you were bringing up your children,
Oh,
what did
yeah.
you think about? What did you know, how did you do it? What did, and she looked at me and she said, we were so busy with survival.
Hmm.
In those days, nobody thought about whether a child was happy or sad, or we hurt their feelings or we didn't. She said that didn't start until Spock in 1952.
Hmm.
And it was very telling
Hmm.
because a lot of what got interpreted in psychology was very mental world,
Ah.
oriented on money, success, achievement, and nobody cared if you were dying at your job.
Mm.
There were sweatshops. My ex-husband, um, father, um, produced those curly lamb coats that were very popular in the 60s and 70s.
Mm.
That was their business, was curly lamb coats. And when I met him, my ex-husband was working on summer. He'd work in the factory, and it was like a sweatshop.
Mm.
He'd work as a cutter, cutting
Mm.
the patterns,
Mm.
and he'd be working 7 in the morning till 7 at night.
Got it.
And the summer before we got married, I worked in the shop.
Mm.
Uh, Not long hours and however I wanted to, but there was no care
Mm.
about what people felt. Were they happy at their job? It was not, it was a business, and business was separated from who you were and how you felt and how your life was.
Right.
You did a job, you got paid, end of case.
Yep.
So my background at University of Chicago was in four worlds.
Mm.
And so it was natural when I started looking at the charts and thinking about how to use them, that I would use them in guiding people as multidimensional four world beings, which I had confirmed with Ra, by the
Mm.
way.
Mm.
You know, Ra and I talked in the Triple Design Matrix book, which I am going to release within the next couple of months, three of them. We talked about the different dimensions of consciousness.
Mm.
We talked about the fact that even in sleep, there are different realms of energy and different frequencies. So the Cosmic Guidance book gives you statements for each day. And if I grab my copy,
Yes.
let's look at today.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to
Today,
read those, that'd be beautiful. The 16th of November.
it says, now each day, for those of you who don't have the book, each day is broken into the four worlds and the integrated. So what I did for each world was I read each one in its composite and in how it would play out. And then I look at all eight together because the eight is showing you. And the reason manifestation does not work for many of you is that manifestation is a 3-month process.
Mm.
When you say, I want X, your super conscious says, okay, it's programming. Boom, 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 boom. Here's the program. Here's the steps you have to take. Here's what has to happen for that to happen, and that to happen, and that to happen. Now, you're a human being. You're not a machine. On day two, something may happen, and you may say, oh, I want to make it this way.
Right.
You have 3 months to self-correct, but be aware, nothing is 3 months. Because 3 months from now is no longer 3 months from now in the next moment. And the lunar and the solar minute and the physical, all worlds have their own timing.
Hmm.
So in many, many charts, I recommend you wait a week.
Mm.
Now, in some of these statements, I say wait a week
Mm.
or you decide. And I say that because what's coming up may give you more information than you're going to have on that day.
Mm-hmm.
For November 16th, I say, in the mental world, what you think might work only works when it follows your inner as well as your outer path. So you think something's going to work, but if you forget to go inside, it's not going to work.
Mm.
Today is that way. On the spiritual, tune in to your deepest core rather than telling yourself what you want to believe to be true. So here again, I'm always going to direct you to spirit.
Mm.
Spirit is where you live. Spirit, when you say, I want, ask yourself, who's speaking? And how do you know that who's speaking is who you want to follow?
Yeah.
Now, that is where a lot of people get stuck in the emotional realm of the moment that is based on physiology and the mental world, not on what's inside of you.
Mm.
Emotional. You are open to others and may find yourself out of sync with other people. So, what I'm saying here is don't bend yourself
Mm.
to be pleasing to other people, that you're open to other people. And I use words very specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say you're open to others, what I'm saying is you may be picking up energy from the people around you. And if you do, you may not feel like you resonate with them.
Mm.
Then you have a choice to make. Now, I'm not giving you the choice per se, but I'm saying if you're out of sync, where do you go?
Mm.
Um, if you may find yourself out of sync with other people. Physical, pushing yourself beyond your physical limits is risky. Okay, integration. So much of oneself often comes in response to those people who are most important to them. Take time today to impact those you most care about by letting them know how much they mean to you and express gratitude to them about how they made a difference in your life. By recognizing the strengths in others, you also build strength in yourself.
Beautiful.
Now, when I suggest a gratitude, I always suggest that that gratitude has a because statement.
Mm.
And the because statement has a format. I'm grateful because, and then I always like to give my gratitude statements a because that has a concrete, tangible effect on me of that action.
Mm.
I learned that in parent effectiveness training,
Ah.
that when it's a need, you, in communication, if you're dealing with another person, it's like a window shade that goes up and down in acceptable versus unacceptable behavior. Or nowadays, it could be words. Generally, it's behavior. Now, Okay, I'm just going to assume it's behavior. So you can record behavior or you can hear it. It can be recorded visually or auditorily because it has an effect on you. So something, in order to have a because statement, should have a tangible and concrete effect on you.
Mm.
The example I give to show a non-effect on me was when my kids said they wanted to eat ice cream for breakfast.
Mm.
And because I couldn't come up with a tangible, concrete effect on me of their behavior, I said, go ahead. They never did it again. But it's a way of telling if somebody cares about you and knows that their behavior in some way impacted you in the negative, they're not going to want to do it again
Yeah.
unless they don't care about you.
Mhm.
So I incorporated that based on some research at the Mayo Clinic on the impact of gratitude on health.
Mm.
When people add a because statement, within 3 weeks, their health improved significantly better than the group that didn't.
I see.
So it's a way of looking at yourself and saying, I did this today, and here's how it impacted me.
Mhm.
And when I started doing it, the one that always comes to mind is brushing my teeth.
Oh.
I'm grateful that I could brush my teeth today because my arms and hands work, and I have a toothbrush that does the job adequately.
Mm.
You know, we forget about these nuanced, insignificant, you know, I'm grateful that I have a pen that writes
Mhm.
and feels good in my hand because I can write for pages and not get a cramp in my hand.
Brilliant.
I mean, everything.
Hmm.
I recommend that you use the Cosmic Guidance book
Mm.
as journaling prompts, as ways to self reflect
Mm.
and to grow. And
Wonderful.
I did gratitude statements for 2 years, every single day, didn't
Mm.
miss a day. And I did them before I went to sleep. And I did them with my daily wisdom practices. So I tried the book out on myself.
Got it.
And because I have always found journaling so valuable,
Mm.
when you do it each day and you anticipate your day and then you self-reflect on your day,
Mm.
you can do something different the next day
Yeah.
if it didn't work. Or if you said something to somebody that you wished you hadn't said, you can make amends.
Yeah. What I'm loving about that framing there is like I'm a single person, so I don't have that like I have Sheba, my the beloved cat. Um, but it gives me a space to potentially talk with the divine, talk
Yeah.
with somebody else besides maybe my beloved.
So
Yeah. Say again?
you're not then going to be talking only to your mental world.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm excited for the people who engage with the book and engage with your reading of the prompts and I wonder actually it's coming to mind, would you like to talk about the Thursday Manifest Your Dreams free webinar that happens each
Sure.
week? Because anybody can come into that. There's no long-term commitment. Yeah?
It's free. Um, Marvin and I started doing a joint webinar
Mm.
March of 2023
Oh.
because the voice told me to go public.
Mm.
And we wanted to help people.
Hmm.
Marvin is a double boarded MD, and I'm a psychologist. I'm clearly not doing any of this work under my license. Um, and I just put my license on inactive
Mm.
because I don't want to do all of what they're requiring right now.
Mm.
It's not aligned with me.
Mm.
So we started doing them, and the transformations in people were so incredible
Yeah.
that there was one lady who started in the webinar, and she literally looked like a bag lady.
Oh.
And her hair was wild, and she was always in costume, literally.
Mm.
After a couple of weeks, she said to me, I feel like there's a negative around me, like something possessed me. I said, okay, I'll do a depossession tonight. So I did a depossession on her,
Mm.
and she came into class looking completely different. It was
Mm.
like she wasn't even the same person.
Wow.
And we did a little bit more work. And within about 6 weeks, she met a man. She hadn't been in a relationship for years.
Wow.
And she began teaching and went off with her man happily ever after.
Whoa. Whoa.
So, the when people saw that, it began to grow.
Mm.
And it's often I have a possible agenda,
Sure.
but I defer to the questions that come up in the webinar.
And the
And
other beautiful thing that you start and end with, I'm wondering if you want to speak to those because I've been finding those really powerful.
oh, you mean the attunements?
Hmm.
I usually start each class with what I call an attunement.
Mm.
And I began doing it because I wanted to get all the participants who were coming from such diverse situations and
Sure.
time zones. We have people from Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and South Africa and all over the United States and Canada. And I wanted to bring everybody into a focused consciousness.
Beautiful.
So I started doing the attunements, and I have no idea what they're going to be,
Mhm.
um, but they just emerge.
Yeah.
And then I close with one.
Yeah.
And they it turned out to be very nice.
Yeah.
Um, Yesterday in the webinar, I mean, 2 days ago in the webinar, I talked about Pluto.
Yep.
And I was sort of stunned. I began to do some research on Pluto, and next week's Manifest Your Dream webinar will be devoted to the transit of Pluto
Mm.
and what we can expect in Aquarius. My astrological ascendant is 4 degrees of Aquarius, and my Venus is 0 degrees Aquarius.
Ah,
So it is no surprise that my work is coming in front of the public now,
got
and
it.
that it would not and could not before now.
Right.
But as Pluto began to peek into Aquarius, my work began to peek out into the public.
Yeah.
But what was stunning to me, absolutely stunning to me, on Thursday was that the last time Pluto went into Aquarius was 1778 to 1798. And then yesterday, I posted an article on Moptu, www.moptu.com.
Mm,
It's a social media platform for articles. So you can post articles that you find that are of interest to you anywhere
mm,
on Opto free, and you can post it and get it to your Facebook and Twitter X account
hmm
or any other accounts,
hmm
and people can share with each other.
Got it.
So I'm going to suggest that I will begin posting on my Mop2. I'll do a four-world page on Mop2.
Oh, wonderful.
And
Wonderful.
all of you can post on that page. Well, you won't be able to. If you all open your own Mop2 page
Ah,
and find articles on the four worlds or on things that interest you, you could then send it to me
mm,
and I could post it as well.
mm,
Or we can go back to each other's pages. You can post books you like.
mm.
Um, I recommended in one of the webinars that everyone watch The Wizard of Oz,
Right, right,
which is about the four worlds.
right.
Each of the characters, Dorothy, the lion, the scarecrow, and the Tin Man, they're the four worlds.
Hmm.
And the wizard is there to integrate the worlds. But guess what? You had them all along.
Right, right,
All you have to do is say you want to go home.
right. Oh, that's so beautiful. What a beautiful ending to our conversation, Dr. Eleanor. Thank you so
Yes.
much. Thank
Oh, you're
you.
welcome. My
Thank you.
pleasure.